All right, Herc, let's focus on El Tri, who are seeking to play a friendly versus Spanish club side Valencia in the upcoming October international window. Mexico already has games scheduled for September against New Zealand and Canada, and reportedly Mexico and the U.S. are going to play in Guadalajara also in October. Herc, it's a little bit something different here from the Mexican Federation. Do you like the idea?
I do, and it's not that different to the Mexican Federation. It's different that we're seeing it now, but, 1986, which was when they were in a quarterfinal, given the format was different, and they were a host country. Bora, remember Bora, the coach of the 1994 Men's World Cup team? He was coaching the 1986 Men's World Cup team for Mexico, and he would do micro ciclos, except they were not so micro. They were very long cycles in which the team would travel together in Europe, to Europe domestically, and they would play club teams, they would play national teams, given in a format where it's much easier to schedule these games, but they would be together. And the idea was if they were to do something special in that World Cup, they would have to do it in a training session to get familiarized with one another, or as much as they can do. So what they essentially did was, back then it was long tournaments. Now you have 2 seasons in a calendar year in Mexico. Back then it was just one long season like you see in Europe. All the national team players were pulled from their club teams. Why would they allow this? Because of the conflict of interest that exists in Mexican football with the domestic soccer league and the national team. The owners of these clubs have a say in what happens to the national team. So these players get pulled from their clubs, and they're practically just living and training together for the better part of 3, 4, 5, 6 months at a time in the lead up to this World Cup tournament, and they had a great showing. They lost in penalty kicks to West Germany, who eventually lost to Argentina in that World Cup final, but they saved face. I think you need to do the same thing to save face if you're the Mexican national team, much like the 1994 Mexican national team did and the 1994 U.S. men's national team did. You American fans are probably too young to remember, but that 1994 team, they were together for the better part of 2 years. They would play almost anywhere from 75 games up. These players would get 75 caps up in those 2 years playing with the national team. And they would tour and play against club teams. They would tour and play against national teams. Whatever they can do to train and be a better team in the lead up to those World Cups. Mind you, all of those almost, well, I should say all home World Cups, because even the 94 for Mexico was a home World Cup.
Yeah, that 94 U.S. team, I mean, most of those players were under contract with the Federation. Like, they didn't even belong to other teams. They were under contract to U.S. Soccer. And to go back to 1986 with Mexico, you could do that and maybe get away with it a little bit more because everybody on that team would have been playing in Liga.
One player didn't play there. Guess who?
Right, Hugo Sanchez, obviously.
Sanchez.
But basically, the entire team is right there, accessible to you.
Can I stop you really quick? This go-around, you have 7 players playing in Europe. Of those 7 players, Orbelín Pineda is reported to come back to Mexico. Cesar Montes reported to come back to Mexico. Memo Ochoa is no longer even active right now. We don't know what's going on with him. You go down the list, there's literally only Edson, Santi, and that's about it, my man. And Johan, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is here is you got to find something different. And I applaud the Mexican Federation for doing something a little bit outside the box. If you look at who's going through qualifiers, Africa, Asia, South America, you look at who's going through Nations League, Europe, and CONCACAF, there's basically nobody to play. I'm curious exactly, how intense a game like this would be. 10, 15 years ago, you were playing Valencia without their international players. It wouldn't have been a very good matchup. Now I look at their roster, they don't have a ton of international players, so maybe you get a pretty decent full-strength look at Valencia. If the game is in Spain, as I've seen in some of the reports, also a little bit of taste of playing maybe away from home, even though we're preparing for 2026. Most of the games are going to be at home. You still want some competition in a hostile environment. You still want to be ready for that. So
I don't know if you remember.
I got no problem with it.
I don't know if you remember a few years back, it was Rivaldo, Brazil played against Barcelona, and Rivaldo played both halves with both teams.
Played one half each.
Yeah, like that was something that used to happen. It doesn't happen anymore, and guess why? Because FIFA has monetized the calendar, and there are no empty spaces, no empty dates. So it's quite frankly impossible with the fixture date. So you got to do what you can, and if they would rather play against Valencia than, with all due respect, New Zealand, with all due respect, Panama, go play against Valencia. Get something out of it.
Yeah, and bottom line, Herc, it's better than a Molero. And we should applaud any time that the Mexican Federation seemingly, because this isn't official yet,
Right.
chooses football over money. That is a great
There may be
sign
a little
of
bit of money
progress.
involved in that as well with the television
Yeah,
rights.
I know, but let me at least be somewhat optimistic here when it comes to the Mexican national team.